Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great stream with some great guests that I think you're really going to enjoy. I promise at some point we'll get back to like political theory, but right now, they're trying to pop off a civil war in Minnesota, so there's really no better practical application of our theoretical understanding of politics than you like people trying to start a hot war in the middle of the country. So we're going to be talking a little more about that. Things have gotten crazy. Protesters and ICE agents have lost fingers. We'll get into some cannibalism that has been involved in this whole thing. It really is centered around another shooting that has taken place. Many different angles, many different theories about how this went down. Does this mean we have to end ICE operations in Minnesota? A lot of people seem to think so, especially some people who otherwise, keep talking about how ICE needs to do a better job or deport more people. So we're going to get into all that today. Joining me to discuss this is, of course, Mr. Kevin Dolan from the Exit Group.
Hey, good to be here.
And everyone's favorite frog, Mr. Mathew Williams. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, Auron. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. We're going to go into all the happenings. Yes, I know happenings, believe it or not, they are actually occurring in Minnesota. But before we do, let's hear it from today's sponsor. Hey guys, scammers and criminals raise the stakes in 2025. In 2026, the choice is up to you. Act or stay exposed. 2025 marked a turning point where threats to privacy and security became more powerful, more precise, and harder to stop. Scams didn't just increase, they leapt forward in complexity. AI began to clone voices, text sounded like family and friends, emails impersonating banks pulled people in. The people hit by these scams aren't chosen at random. Here's how they get targeted. Your personal information, your name, address, phone number, family members, age, and online behavior, it's all publicly available online right now. It's not hidden and it's not hard to find. It's published. You can see it for yourself by simply Googling your name and address. You'll find hundreds of data brokers openly listing where you live, who you live with, and how to contact you. This is how scammers decide who to target. This is how identity fraud starts, long before the damage shows up. As 2026 begins, there's a choice to make. Do you keep leaving your information online and vulnerable, or do you take action to remove it? 2025 showed us what unchecked exposure leads to. If you want to start 2026 with less exposure and more control, use my code Auron for 15% off all Patriot Protect plans. Head to patriot-protect.com/Auron and use the promo code Auron for 15% off the yearly subscription. All right, guys, let's dive in because so much is happening. It's hard to know where to even start. Right before I joined the stream, people were tweeting out that some protester had her fingers blown off by non-lethal ammunition from ICE. It looks like now people are saying that actually she tried to pick up a flashbang grenade that was thrown down and it went off in her hand. So we're getting a lot of this. We're getting a lot of, oh, well, ICE is out there. They're kidnapping children. They're, blowing people's fingers off. And the vast majority of this stuff just turns out to be like, oh, actually, these illegal immigrants left this child, abandoned this child. Actually, no, this idiot ran in and grabbed this flashbang. We're going to get to the biggest controversy, which is the shooting itself. But Kevin, why don't you start by talking a little bit about the role that propaganda and the control of the narrative flow, how that impacts a military or police operation in a high pressure situation like this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's intended to place you in the role of judge. It's intended to place you in the role of you get to decide how you feel morally about this incredibly complicated moment that most people have no context for. There's the number of people in the United States who've been in any kind of physical altercation whatsoever is quite low, and so they want to encourage you to put yourself, insinuate yourself, and encourage you to litigate this scene. Which, I mean, this particular one with this Pretty guy, I can't even make heads or tails of it. I have no idea what's even going on in that video. And I guess, the one of Alinsky's rules for radicals is freeze the target and personalize it. And it's all about creating a personalized individual narrative that sort of says it all about whatever you're trying to get people to feel or think or do. And I think it's a mistake for us to take the other side of that bet and say like, well, you know, I think because of the following like 50 reasons that it was actually a righteous shoot. Like that's just the wrong frame in my opinion. And it never, I mean, you look at that Somali cop that shot that white girl, and like, or the guy who got whacked by the FBI because he tweeted things about Biden in Utah, actually. And it's like these you're not encouraged to relitigate those because they don't fit the narrative that's being tried, that they're trying to propagate. And so it's entirely about like where the camera is pointed. And one of the sort of hallmarks of like the way the left thinks about these things is they interpret their willingness to be like steered by the camera and respond emotionally the way they're supposed to respond. Like that's what being a good person is to them. And I think one of the things we have to do is sort of step away from that and say like, no, I actually am not going to care about whatever you decide to like point me in front of like a, you know, like a pack animal. I'm going to think about the big picture. I'm going to think about what this, I'm going to decide for myself what all of this means.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been incredibly frustrating to watch a lot of people who otherwise understand or say they understand the severity of the situation talk about this as if they don't know that the left is operating this way, that they aren't creating this tension. Because Mathew, they've released a signal chat in which a large number of Antifa sympathizers, leftists in Minnesota, or active Antifa members are coordinating together to try to create these situations. And we're not just talking like random, you know, Soros activists, though I'm sure there are many on there. We're talking about advisors to Tim Walz, local politicians, local media figures, and academic. Like there is a who's who of like straight up cathedral members, right? These are not just street
on there, right?
I'm sorry?
The lieutenant governor was on there, right?
Yeah,
I believe that has recently come out, yes, as well, right? And so we have this scenario where we know that the government is top-down coordinating this. This is not in any way organic. This is not in any way, you know, just people out there, you know, legally observing and showing, you know, that this situation is exactly the one they wanted put in forward. And look, we'll get into the shoot itself, but even if it's a bad shoot, we'll just say, okay, even if it was a bad shoot, did you think you're going to deport 20 million people without one bad law enforcement interaction? Like, what kind of adult has that outlook? When you have police, you know, interact with maybe 10,000 people a year in a large city, maybe that seems like even high, really high. You're going to get some bad police interactions. You thought 20 million wasn't going to bring anything. It just seems kind of infantile to me. I don't know, Mathew. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, and I mean, it's so important for us to look at the context of how previous revolutionary events have happened in the United States. When we hear phrases like the legal observers, I'm instantly reminded of Brian Burroughs' Days of Rage, where the legal observer term was really coined and spearheaded by the National Lawyers Guild, which had been, you know, the one-stop shop for all sorts of planning for Antifa and other revolutionary groups to have legal representation in ways in which they can skirt the law or have, you know, the legal means to get away with the actions that they're doing. So, I mean, these are playbooks and things that we've seen happen in the past. We just have better technology to find and infiltrate and do so. In fact, I was seeing people pass around various little programs from Google and, of course, through all sorts of through Reddit and other social medias, that there are ways in which people are trying to find applications in which they can get coordinated or organize with other individuals or learn how to resist authoritarianism. And at the same time, over and over, we see on CNN that we're seeing invocations of the great civic religion, where ICE is now all of a sudden going to put people into ovens in the middle of freezing cold Minnesota. Imagery aside, it just comes to show that everyone is on board and on message when it comes to the left. There is very much blood and soil nativism when it comes to, you know, the federal government coming into Minnesota to do its job, elected on the mandate to deport, you know, millions and millions of people who are in this country illegally, not to mention some that have overstayed their visa. All these things, to me, what I've been seeing has been deliberate interactions with federal law enforcement to create optically gray, you know, optically unsure sort of shootings or interactions in which they can then point to their various media heads and figures and to mobilize millions of people towards generating public opinion. As Kevin had said, it's trying to frame you inside whatever the phone camera is going to tell you to do so. And the fandomization of the news has been an ongoing phenomenon for decades now. And for those that are younger than us, they all rely on someone that they go to more or less, offshore and outsource their moral opinions to. So if the person they like to watch is saying that this is evil or this is bad, then they're going to believe it. And I agree with Kevin wholeheartedly that we can't allow ourselves to simply buy into whatever frame that they're pointing us to. We need to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that from the top down, the state of Minnesota, as well as many Minneapolis officials, have either willingly or have directly coordinated with multi-million, if not billion dollars of fraud. The Minnesota taxpayer is the largest funder of Al-Shabaab. It certainly seems to be that way from recent reports. And on top of all of this, they're actively stopping and interfering with federal law enforcement officials on the issue that the federal government has supreme authority over, which is the national sovereignty of our borders and immigration. So if anything, we're witnessing insurrection play out in real time, and more evidence seems to come out that that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, it really is wild. And to your both of your points about, the focusing in, the whole reason I named the stream this is literally one of these like absolute animals bit the finger off of an ICE agent. I can't show you because YouTube, but why are we seeing 1,000 videos of that? Why aren't people breaking down the play on that? It's gruesome, it's vicious, right? But we don't see any of that because this is what the focus has to be, right? Like this is the debating over this narrative has now become the entire game. And you're seeing the fact that Tim Walz was already in a terrible situation. As you point out, Mathew, the fraud story had broken. There was going to be a huge backlash. That news cycle was going to hurt the Democrats. They knew it. And Tim Walz was stepping down. He wasn't going to run for being governor anymore. He's basically politically ruined out of the whole thing. And what do you know? All of a sudden, there's this manufactured show. And all of a sudden, ICE is coming in and we've got to have this knockdown. Now, Walz has just said, apparently, Trump has announced this, that he is willing to cooperate with ICE. And if his officers cooperate with ICE and bring the illegals out, then ICE operations will cease in the area. Now, some people are saying, well, that would be a retreat by Trump. But I think at this point, that was always the situation. The reason we're not seeing these incidents in red states isn't because they aren't deporting people from red states. It's that red states are handing the illegals to the ICE agents when they show up. There's no need to go into these dangerous situations and retrieve them. So it's a scenario where all you would be doing is setting us up to the situation where we were supposed to be. Now, I'm honestly doubtful that the left will de-escalate, and I'm honestly doubtful that the Minnesota police will ultimately cooperate. And so I think that this probably will not work out, but this is what Trump has announced. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I guess we'll go ahead and get into the video of the shooting, which is what everybody is currently debating here. As Kevin said, when I first started looking at this, I couldn't tell what was going on at all. I had to watch this many times, have it broken down very slowly before a picture of this emerged. So I put together, I think, about 4 videos to help us kind of know where this is coming from. But here is the activists coming in. Now, I want to remind you, the left hates gun rights. They hate people carrying guns. They certainly hate the idea of people defending themselves against federal officers or the police with guns. The idea that they would be like, look, man, that guy at J6, he was just using his constitutional carry rights. He's a legal observer of what's happening during the election. Like, obviously garbage. So all of the left's, stuff about this is entirely embarrassing. But here is the first video, the one that really got around for most people. Now, I want to focus before we get into the actual breakdown because, both of you pointed this out with kind of the rules for radicals. You'll notice the constant whistleblowing. People might not know, but they're going out there and getting these super loud, like rape whistles, and they're just blowing them nonstop the entire time they're out there for 2 reasons. One, because it's there to distract and like psychologically shake the officers. They want them to constantly be on edge. It is there to manufacture on edge behavior. They want them to be pushed to the edge and possibly make mistakes. That's the whole purpose of the whistle. But the other thing is that it's loud enough to constantly disrupt communication, making it difficult for the officers to hear each other, to know what's going on. So they're, again, hoping to force mistakes by officers miscommunicating, not being able to hear each other over the whistles, not being able to tell each other what's going on, possibly hide criminal behavior or attacks. So all of this is coordinated. None of this is some organic protest, some kind of general outpouring of understanding from the community. This is a coordinated terrorist operation, start to finish, designed to manufacture what's going to happen. This is what they wanted to happen. Never forget this. This is what Tim Walz wanted. This is what his lieutenant governor, his advisors, this is what they were coordinating to create.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
All right, so they're trying to arrest a violent illegal, and you can see this person run up, and also the guy who will eventually be involved in the shooting, they run up here. The ICE agent shoves the woman away who ran up to him, and then the guy who has, and I'll show you the video here previously, this is not when he first entered the area, but this is the guy who's going to be involved in the shooting here. He gets maced. He continues to interfere. He ends up getting pulled off by the ICE agent and to the ground.
The fuck, people? The fuck
You
is
see
wrong with you?
the swarming there
Honestly.
in the huddle, and then you're going to hear a shot here in a minute. And kind of everybody scatters from there. So that's kind of the first video that I think came out beforehand that most people saw, but it's very difficult to get what happened there, especially because the camera drops just as the gun is being fired. Now, this video here, you can see that the same guy was involving himself, getting in the face, filming, arguing with, shoving the ICE agent previously. So he's not just some guy who happened to walk into the area. Also, armed, did not have identification. Now, this is really interesting here because during this struggle, you find out that the guy had a weapon, but he was disarmed during this. And if you go slow here, you can see this is the guy who removed the weapon. This is the ICE agent who removed the weapon from the guy's holster as the rest of them were trying to subdue him. And if you watch, you'll see that it actually looks like it discharges. You can actually see the slide move as he's walking away.
Wouldn't it be crazy if like the whole Civil War popped off because of those faulty triggers?
Right. So this is what we're going to get into, because I think a lot of people don't know the background of this weapon. So maybe Kevin, you can explain a little bit about the SIG P320 and why it is now infamous with the military.
I'm not at all a gun guy. I'm not going to embarrass myself talking about this. Basically,
Okay.
all I know is that they're faulty triggers and they have a tendency to discharge when they're not supposed to.
So for people who don't know, this is a striker fired gun. Like most these newer guns, these kind of Glock style guns have what's called a striker instead of a hammer. And so that striker is usually pre-cocked in the gun. And then the trigger releases. And what has been happening is that over the years, people have been removing the manual safety from these guns and has also lightened the trigger pull on these guns. And the more that has happened, the more likely you are to get a negligent discharge, because the only things that kind of keep you from firing a gun accidentally are the holster it's in, an external safety, and the weight of the trigger, which is like why revolvers or classic hammer double action guns have a longer trigger pull, because they don't have a manual safety. Or if you have a gun that's got a lighter trigger pull, you want a manual safety on it. But we've kind of been pushing the edge of this in gun technology to where you have no manual safety and the trigger's like 4 pounds, which just means it's far more likely to go off. Now, there's also been rumors that when the gun is dropped, it fires on its own, that it is not drop safe. Now, obviously, this is not a drop situation. So whether or not that is an accurate assessment, I don't know. But the gun has become so infamous for discharges that there are now questions about whether this gun, which was widely adopted to replace the Beretta 92 by the military, whether it will actually continue to be the new military sidearm. But yeah, I mean, Matt, what do you think about the likelihood that this was all based on basically this guy removing the gun but then it accidentally firing as he's removing it, and the other cops are reacting to that gunshot, not realizing that in the huddle, this guy has pulled the gun out?
Yeah, I mean, if the real cause behind all this is going to be a negligent discharge after the individual had been disarmed, I mean, a lot of jokes have already been made regarding this being, a SIG, and everyone's had their fun with that. But again, as you had said just about 5 minutes ago, was that the whistles are being blown, people are screaming, horns are being honked. This is all deliberately meant to disrupt communication. And when I'm being surrounded by hostile citizens as well as illegal immigrants that are trying to do everything in their power to keep me away from doing my task and my mission, and all of a sudden I hear a gunshot after being probably briefed that morning that from command, or already seeing it on the news, that there have been countless people that have tried to ram cars at me, have dragged fellow agents halfway across the road and have bloodied them up on their behalf. It's the same thing with the officer that shot Renee Good. It goes time and time again that I'm not going to take a risk if I hear a gunshot go off. And I think that the agents in question acted on instinct and purpose. Whether this is inevitably due to a negligent discharge, one, it shows the point that this guy was going up here, confronting these agents, had camera in hand, and was armed, either preparing to defend himself or very more likely to cause some kind of confrontation with federal law enforcement. And as we've seen from the group chat, and as we've seen from other left-wing revolutionary movements inside the U.S. throughout the years, they want morally questionable actions. They want things on film where they can spin the message, as Kevin was talking about. That way they can say all out that this is what, this is how evil they are, this is how fascist they are, and sort of win the sort of media game going on here. And I mean, we have the benefit because obviously we wouldn't have the opportunity to nitpick and tear this apart and deconstruct sort of these left-wing, frame devices as we would if Twitter was still under the control of Parag Agrawal or even Jack Dorsey beforehand. But again, it still shows that, for a lot of the older electorate who still rely on the mainstream press, this kind of conversation probably won't happen as often as whether or not, ICE should do their job or not when it comes to CNN or even Fox.
So I think it's critical, like you said, to remember the level of stress involved and the whistles going on and everything else, because what you see in this is several of the officers around him. You see them, most cannot see anywhere near the back and they can't see each other. So the fact that this guy is removing the gun, someone yells gun, right? One of the officers yells gun. This guy in the jacket, the gray jacket here, removes the gun. But it removes it at an angle that it's very difficult for anyone else to see. I doubt that anyone else knew that he had removed the gun at that point. Certainly not the officers on the other side of the suspect, right? Like there's no way that they would have seen what was going on. At the same time, you will see, and I think this is pretty definitive here, this move. So this is the gun has been removed. You can see the officer who moved it back here. He's struggling to stand up, and as he does, he reaches back right to where his gun is. And as he reaches back right to where his gun is, that's when you hear the fire. That's where you hear the gunfire, when he's reaching. And after he reaches and he's hit, when he falls over, there's something in his hand as he falls over. It might have been one of his additional magazines. He was carrying 2 magazines. There's probably one on a mag carrier on the holster. So it looks like the guy was not technically armed at the time of being shot. However, he was armed in the scuffle. He was disarmed within half a second, right? Like these are very quick, highly kinetic situation. Whistles going off everywhere, screaming, people filming, running up, yelling the whole time. I doubt that any of the officers, except the one that actually removed the gun, knew the gun was out of his hand. And once they saw him reach for where the gun had been, where they called the gun, where they knew he was armed, they fired. And the guy obviously probably still thought he had a gun. He was reaching for the holster. He came back out with something. Like I said, I think it's a magazine. It's hard to tell for sure, but it looks like he has one of the gun's additional magazines. So he was reaching for something in the holster. So I think what happened was even the guy who was shot didn't know he no longer had a gun. If he didn't know, how were the officers supposed to know? I think this isn't a great shoot. Like, I think the Renee Good shoot was like pretty clean. I think that's actually entirely justifiable. I think this one is still justifiable given the level of stress and all the mitigating factors, but this one's not as clean. So I think it's fair to say this could have gone better. This is an unfortunate scenario, but this guy absolutely put himself in a, ready to die scenario. I wear a gun quite often. I've been carrying for, decades at this point. I've interacted with law enforcement. I have broken up fights. I am very careful when I have a gun on me with how I behave and how I interact with certain situations. If I was to suddenly decide to, get rough with an officer who's arresting me while I had a gun on my hip, I would imagine something very bad could happen to me. I would never be dumb enough to do that. Like, the gun's there. If like someone's trying to kill me, I'll stop them, but I'm not going to walk up to and try to start a fist fight with a police officer while wearing a gun. Like, that's just kind of putting myself in a scenario that, I'm winning a Darwin Award there. So I guess my point is, yeah, it's not the cleanest shoot in the world, but I don't think it's like actually that heinous. I think it's understandable given the scenario. And the guy put himself exactly in a situation where they wanted to manufacture this.
There's this accusation of hypocrisy, and everybody's kind of switching sides on the Second Amendment and all these things. Back in 2020 and 2021, we were watching the protests unfold, and I was trying to be as vocal as I could about, like, if you're at one of these protests, you should observe the tactical flexibility that Antifa has because they are not armed with guns, with firearms. They're using bike locks, they're using skateboards, they're using all these things that have like dual purpose, deniable capacity, where they can sort of say, like, it's not obvious that it was me, or the black bloc tactics with the masking. But also there's this escalation of like, everybody kind of knows that in the game, the riot cops are going to get some things thrown at them. And that's sort of, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's just sort of understood as like, that doesn't justify lethal force. Right. And basically what I think happened here is that the left is encountering what we observed when kind of the shoe was on the other foot in 2020 and 2021. The extent to which a firearm binarizes the situation. It means you can either be not aggressive or you can be lethal force aggressive, and there's not a whole lot of in between. And that in between space is where so much of the power lies in these protests. And one of the things that I want to like draw out, like, there is much to be studied about these tactics, and in one sense to disrupt them and to stop them, and because these are people that we oppose, but also like there's so much power accumulated. They've accomplished a tremendous deal. Like, this did not emerge out of nowhere. Like the level of organization and all of the people who are doing things that are not this aggressive, that are not this violent, but that nevertheless achieve their stated purposes. Like, we have to step back from the, like, yes, of course, it's a bad cause, and we hate what they're doing and we want to stop them. But like, let's take a step back and let's like learn what can be learned from this, because there's so many people showed up. So many people got involved. You had your post about like, we're not going to be able to grill our way through this, right? We're not going to be able to grill while Rome burns. The libs in Minneapolis are not grilling. They are dead serious about what they want to achieve. And one of the things that I think is so critical here, I read that like that document about how to resist ICE, right? There was a big like kind of Notion document that went out that was like going to the signal groups and stuff. What struck me about that document was, it wasn't like, here's how you make a Molotov cocktail. It wasn't, here's how you get in a fist fight with police. It was all about the very like kid gloves, careful, non-violent, non-confrontational. It was like totally like soccer mom proved, how do you get involved in these protests? And I think because, there's a lot of like tough guy energy on our side of things. And so, and again, it's this binary thing. It's like, it's either nothing or it's lethal force. Right. And I just think that there's so much we could accomplish if we were willing to like get involved in our local situation, stop being a spectator. This is not college ball. This is your country. This is your life. This is your family. And there's things you can do that are not Fed posting, that won't land you in prison, And I just think that's such an important thing to draw out of this is like realize what is impressive about this capacity. And also one last thing, like the what they say they're doing, right? They say we're here to disrupt and stop ICE from doing what they're doing. But if you read the handbooks, the manuals they put out about how to disrupt these tactics, there's absolutely nothing in there that actually in any plausible world prevents ICE from doing its job. And this is sort of how this is the lie that's embedded in all this, is they say that they're to stop ICE. They're not there to stop ICE. They can't stop ICE with the tactics they've enumerated. What they can do is rattle them and create dangerous situations. They can put themselves in harm's way in the hopes of creating a non-optical shoot. And if you do that across thousands of officers for tens of thousands of hours, you're going to get what you want. It's so many of these things are just a numbers game.
Yeah, I mean, if you pay enough attention to revolutions throughout modern history, you know that pretty much all of them start with, and then a bunch of soldiers were standing around and a crowd started throwing things at them. And all of a sudden you had the Boston Massacre. This is pretty much a story that repeats every time, clashes like this occur. Now, one of the things, as you pointed out, Kevin, is just the level of dedication the left has shown. And this was really frustrating to me because when I was, trying to talk sense into some of these people who otherwise have been telling me, ICE isn't doing enough. They're not deporting enough. They're not getting the job done. I kept saying, look, guys, what do you think this looked like? Right? Like we're going to vibes, essays, papers. Like that was the whole, it's like you thought we were just going to hit them with a Substack article and they were all going to go home. Like these guys are dedicated to this. They know this is existential. Like the immigration issue is existential for both sides. The left has to have immigrants here to rig elections and run their patronage schemes. The right has to deport these people or they will lose elections in perpetuity. And no matter how many times I have to explain this to people, they still come back to me like, well, but we should be doing this better. It's like, okay, man, then explain to me how we do this better. But in the meantime, we got to be doing this. Like the doing is the operative part.
I can imagine a cleaner way to do this, but what it involves is the type of policy work and the building of the infrastructure that, it involves like leaning on your congressman. It involves political organization on a level that we just do not have. And so basically what you've got the administration trying to like cobble together, you remember in 2020, they had like Bortak defending the White House. Like they're trying to cobble together this power that they sort of, whatever they sort of have the legal authority to deploy. But they're not, they're ice skating uphill because everything has to go run through a judge and it's not explicitly within the ambit of like what's been, written out in policy. And like, so if you want this to be cleaner, then you have to give them more explicit, procedural, legitimate authority.
Yes.
Which means you have to like get off your ass.
No, absolutely. And this is what's so frustrating. Look, Mathew, you and I have been on this show so many times Like it almost is just a broken record between the two of us. We need to see mandatory e-verify. We need to see, punishing the employers. We need to see taxes on remittances. We need to see these large sweeping going after employers. All this stuff, it has to happen. But the Trump administration can't get it done because they can't even get a Republican Congress to pass their appointees, much less like pass new regulations and give them new authority. So while I 100% agree that the smart move would be to use all these soft power mechanisms to get these guys to self-deport because they can't get healthcare and they can't get jobs, and sending money back home costs as much as it is to make it. Like, if we could do all that, that'd be fantastic. But since we can't seem to do it, since there is no political will in the conservative movement to actually pass any laws, the only thing left for the Trump administration to do is use executive power and use and mobilize what they have. So I don't know. This is the thing I keep asking people when I talk to them, Mathew. What else do you do if you can't pass these pieces of legislation? What's the alternative? And the answer I keep getting back is, well, just not this, which again would be great if it was in the 1990s and we had 30 years to figure this out, but we didn't figure it out, and we didn't listen to Peter Brimelow, and we didn't listen to Pat Buchanan, and now we're here. So this is what we've got. You go to war with the army you have.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important that the most honest 5 minutes of politics maybe that's ever come from Congress was during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings in 2017. I know that he is currently facing some kind of terminal cancer diagnosis, but then Senator Ben Sasse has just flat out told Kavanaugh and the American public that Congress has effectively stopped doing its job, and it drafts shell pieces of legislation in which it offers funding to the executive branch, and it allows executive cabinet level directors and administrators to set the law functionally. And then when the American people don't like that kind of politics and Congress doesn't do anything, the Supreme Court becomes the politics of last resort. And when we have had a Republican-controlled Congress where either they don't want to vote for Trump's agenda, or there's special interests involved, or they haven't been sufficiently motivated by party leadership. And of course, what Kevin had said is absolutely true. We're not doing our job either. I get it. Some of us would love to wake up one day and it's a monarchy or something else. We don't have that system. You're not going to, Rome wasn't built in a day. You have to work with the tools that you have. And this means calling your congressman, being active and involved in the democratic process in a way that I think most people tend to write off or say that there is no good. If the administration can take your memes and have them made into some little dark age edit on the DHS Twitter account, imagine the kind of political pressure you could do if you were to simply harass and call your congressman every day for the rest of your life. You would get a lot more done than you realize, because it's not really the congressman who cares, but it's the staffers. They're the ones who keep track of this. The Twitterification of our politics has been a lot of good in the way in which we can get things towards the administration's attention. But on policy, we're politically illiterate for a lot of people when it comes to the fact that Congress still holds the gold, the goose that prints the golden egg and lays it, because they're the ones that control the purse and control virtually anything else that we want to get done in this country outside of what's enumerated into the president under the Constitution. And so by trying to play with the tools that we have, we're incredibly limited. And so this is in which the ways that the administration has used BORTAC. This is the way in which they've started to look at, well, what can we do through the Treasury? This is why we've seen calls from the administration on everything like you and I have discussed, Auron, on credit card interest rates, to trying to ban, large multinational and, large companies from owning single family homes, because effectively you have 1/3 of government operating in the way that it should. And even then you have the civil service and the federal system that we have with our state governments. Half of the country is not cooperating with him either. So this is the most effective, conservative, right wing, whatever you want to call it, administration in my lifetime. And they're fighting effectively with one hand behind their back because Congress doesn't want to do anything. And half the country doesn't want to cooperate with them either. And so when it comes to the questions of like our toolboxes, it's the same kind of citizen journalism work that exposed those signal chats. It's the same kind of work that has been done on getting congressional officials and staffers to be aware of the scale of the problem. And at the same time, as what Kevin had said, it's to not fall for the bait. There's going to be a million videos of some ICE agent pushing some fat white liberal away from their van, or watching someone run away after trying to ram their car into somebody. If you want to support ICE and to do their job, then the best way to be doing that is to look at what tools that we haven't investigated or talked about and make them aware as options, not just on the federal level, but on the state and local level as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had words for, these guys running around in Minnesota and ripping people out of their vehicles to beat them, or stabbing, conservative journalists, or storming churches, but all of a sudden you're worked up about this, I think you just hate Trump. I think that's it. And I'm sorry, I really do. I think it's just that skin deep. You just hate Trump reflexively, and you're just going after it because look, there's plenty wrong the Trump administration has done. We've been over that, right? And the GOP is an absolute disaster. Like, the GOP is the enemy, to be clear. Like, we have to defeat the GOP before we can even hope to defeat the Democrats. Like, they are the enemy. They won't pass any legislation. They won't confirm any of the nominations. The Republican Congress, the GOP, is the greatest inhibition, the greatest stepping stone or stumbling block to the Trump administration doing the things you want them to do. But no pressure there. No big calls to, get rid of all these congressmen and senators that don't have a spine. No, it's all this. Look, Trump had to basically build a personal army out of ICE. There's a reason they suddenly got a military style budget. It's not because they didn't have other federal law enforcement agencies. It's that they couldn't trust them. They can't trust Homeland Security even in a lot of ways, but they also definitely can't trust like the FBI. Like, so they have to move everything through the few channels where they have real and total control. And it's not pretty and it's not easy. And there's going to be a lot of difficulty, but people need to understand this. Like, you have to understand the level of like rerouting the entire structure of the federal government just to get the things they're getting done now, much less everything you actually want them to do. So if you're telling me you want 3 or 4 times the deportations, Trump administration is too slow in deportations, but then you're yelling at like the few deportations they can get done because they were big meanie pants when they did them. Like, I'm sorry, you're a child. Like, I don't have time for this. But Mathew, what about the possibility of de-escalation in Minnesota? Like I said, we saw Trump saying that Tim Walz is cutting deals. Maybe ICE can get out of there if the police end up complying and working with ICE. Do you see this happening? Do you think the Democrats are going to force this to continue to be a flashpoint even if Tim Walz does cut a deal? Do you think Tim Walz will just lie to get ICE out of there and then continue what he's doing? What should the Trump administration be doing? Should they trust Walz on this?
From my understanding of the phone call and what information's come out is that Trump will reduce the number of federal agents if local officials increase cooperation, right. Which I don't think anyone believes that that's going to happen. There's not going to be any cooperation. And when Walz called in the National Guard, they put on brightly colored reflective vests to know that they're not ICE handing out coffee and donuts. And that's sort of been what's been making the media rounds lately, at least on my timeline. And I think that it's very indicative that anyone that's on the side of, Walz or the protesters on these issues, there's not going to be any cooperation. It's sort of an ultimatum, I think, that may have been laid out that, it's easy to say, well, you reneged on our promise. We're going to send more ICE agents in. And I think that even the most ardent Trump supporters are very happy to, say and play along these lines of, if they're not going to cooperate, then why should we leave? There are plenty of people that have been either fed posting or calling for more action to be done because what they're witnessing is just a taste of the kind of organized stuff that we saw both in 2020, but they want to do this in virtually every major metropolitan area in America because those places have been effectively ethnically cleansed of Americans. So that now that it's just protesters, allies, and collaborators with the invasion and replacement of the United States. The call for me, at least, I think that only time will tell as more information comes out, but there's no reason to leave Minnesota. There's no reason to do so. There's been investigations into Walz already, and he knows that his goose is cooked. So I think that whatever kind of CYA he's going to have to do on his own end, he can't necessarily jeopardize as well those that are already willing to put their lives on the line, because there's a lot of things that are outside of the governor's mansion that are going to go on with or without him. And so I don't see cooperation or de-escalation possible at present moment.
Same question to you, Kevin. If we're in the scenario, is de-escalation possible? And if acceleration is, as Matt is saying here, ultimately inevitable, where does this go? Is there any end to this? The left's just start, is it bleeding Kansas? Do you just start piling in to Minnesota and keep keep getting more and more violent? Do they break once I show sufficient level of force? Does the Trump administration ultimately buckle when things get too hairy? What would you think would be the outcome here?
So you can't keep 1 million people in the streets for all that long. The level of the waves of people that we saw in like the Floyd riots, that was like, number one, like a generational issue. And it was the middle of summer. It was easier to get out in the streets. And what you do is, I mean, it's the same thing as what happens at nightfall. You sort of lose the soccer moms and you get the hardliners, right? That's who stays. And that does make them easier to target, right? Makes them easier to sort of identify and round up. I've advocated for a long time for kind of the Chi-Com Hong Kong approach to this, which is to, you know, spray them with tracer dye, you know, track their phones and you know, go get them 2 weeks later in their house and don't make a big scene out of it. And just, you know, because, you know, they can decide the theater they want to be in for the riot, for the protest, but they don't have to be arrested there. You know, we can decide where to arrest them. And so, but as to your other question about like, can this be de-escalated? I mean, personnel is policy. Like as long as revolutionary communists are in charge of all these state governments, like they're going to be revolutionary communist states. That's not going to change without, I mean, essentially a reconstruction. And so and I also thought your point about, you know, taking over the GOP, defeating the GOP is, I mean, that is the central issue. And that's been true since 2016. I mean, we couldn't get the border wall built with the trifecta back then. We had it back then. And so, yeah, and the good news there is like, these people don't actually believe in anything. They exist to play a game. They exist to get paid. Like they're not passionate about any of this. And one of the things that I have observed in getting involved in my own kind of local politics is that there are people who care and who are passionate about changing the Republican Party. And the messaging it's so much more powerful. People are actually listening. They're actually ready for change, but you have to show up. You have to like go get appointed a delegate or a precinct chair. Like I've got guys in Exit who are literally just like doing like a garbage cleanup or showing up to some event, and they're immediately like getting put in charge of some committee in their local party because nobody shows up. And you know, we talk a lot of crap on the boomers, but like, you know, the Tea Party had organization. The boomers showed up for things. The boomers ran these social clubs and these social organizations, and I don't know if they understood it consciously necessarily, but like all this stuff with the left, the fact they're able to get these like hardliners in the streets, that's the bottom of this incredibly broad funnel that starts in like book clubs, and it starts in like very unobjectionable, very like normie friendly social gatherings that you need to be a part of. You need to be connecting with your local community. Like that's kind of what we're doing at Exit, right? We're trying to build a fraternity where guys do this and they organize for power. But yeah, I mean, it's so essential that we defeat the GOP. And I think it's a totally attainable goal because it's just the absolute, you know, most useless people you can imagine.
Yeah, guys, it's time to, you know, wear the GOP like a skin suit. Okay, that's where we're going here. Okay, and you're right. There's groups like Exit. There's groups like Old Glory Club, and I know several other fraternal organizations all operating. Many of these are not explicitly political, but these guys are gonna, you know, they're bringing in lawyers, they're bringing in doctors, they're bringing in capable business leaders, community leaders, and they're gonna build that network. And so you need to be a part of this. Like you know, a lot of guys. What can I do? What can I do? Oh, you know, how can I take action? This is how you take action. Okay. We have to take over the GOP. We don't have any other option at this point. So you got to get in there. And that means being involved in your community. That means going to your church. That means plugging into different civic organizations. That means you joining things like fraternal organizations. You need to build the networks. You need to work your way into these positions, not because of my democracy, but because ultimately this is going to give you control of the political organs you need to actually affect this change. hopefully it's much faster than that. But either way, this is the right answer. Okay, whether this happens slow or it happens fast, it happens because partially you guys are plugged in. So that is an excellent goal. And speaking of everyone being plugged in, we are stacking up quite a few super chats, so we should probably get to that. So I'm not keeping you guys here forever. But before we do, Matthew, where should people find your excellent work?
Sure. Thank you, Auron. And Kevin, it's great to talk with you. Thanks for having me on. So you can just find me anywhere with the lovely little frog on Twitter at Mr. Prudentialist. I'm also writing quite often for the Old Glory Club and numerous other publications, focusing more on the very policy questions that we can find on history that allows us to sort of answer these problems. I couldn't agree more with both of you that getting involved and getting engaged is the way to do that, because I'll tell you what, the boomers who showed up in the last several political waves, they get excited and are so happy when someone under the age of 50 or even under the age of 40 shows up to one of these events and expresses interest. So, it's not so much about the work that I do, but if you're willing to show up to these things and actually present yourself as competent, you will be very surprised at how quickly you are entrusted with a responsibility and the way to shape policy in your own image.
That's exactly right. And this is so important, guys. Again, I hear so many people, what can I do in real life? How do I, and this is not just about politics. The politics is great, but this is also going to build your confidence. This is going to put you, this is going to build your social skills. This is going to make it easier for you to impress a woman, to find, like all of the things you want are here in your ability to lead. And if you show up to any of these organizations and you're like reasonably well put together and under 40, they're going to slap you in leadership so quick, your head is going to spin. They're going to have you running the organization in 5 years. I promise you, if that. So it's not just that you get to show up. It's not just that you get to participate. It's just not that you get to build those skills and further your goals, but you're also probably going to own the place in just a few years. It's just the perfect solution to pretty much every problem you're looking for. So get out there, make it happen. Kevin, where can people find your work?
Yeah, so the site is exitgroup.us. The newsletter, we do it once a week, is blog.exitgroup.us, and then I'm extra dead JCB on Twitter.
Excellent. All right, guys, let's go to your questions. Grim says, wait, they're what? Yes, I know, surprising, but they literally did eat one ICE agent's finger. I mean, they spit it back out, but yeah, it is. We do have full-on zombie action happening in Minnesota. Cherry Coke Nixon says, Walz asked Trump to make a deal only hours after right-wing analysts exposed a CCP-funded signal group. Walz is spooked. He knows Dems take China money. I hope that's true. I hope that the answer is he is so scared he's going to do this. But you know what? I think, what was it, like 3 or 4 days ago, like after this stuff had been going for a day or two, he already said, hey, let's turn down the temperature. Let's figure this out. Let's work together. Let's not get violent, all these things. And you know what? None of it happened. They stepped, his lieutenant governor's still coordinating this stuff. So unless the signal chat is absolutely just backbreaking, I don't know that will change, but I hope you're right. I really do. Jacob Zindel says, RICO charges for signal chat organizers now. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Difficult, it takes a while to build those cases, but this is obviously criminal conspiracy. The question will be what they discussed in the signal chat. If they actually, if it was just be here, do this, bring this, or if someone actually said, no, we need to create this situation. No, we need to, harass this cop. Like they probably have to explicitly coordinate an actual crime in the chat for RICO to stick. So I have not perused every single thing said in there. Maybe that was the case, but I'm not sure if there's sufficient evidence to make the full RICO case. But if there is, they should absolutely pursue it. Shaker Silver says, ICE shock and awe belies many issues. No, I'm sending ICE in the hostile ground off the bat. FBI is MIA on tackling insurrectionists to make it easier. Well, that's because you can't trust the FBI because it's full of enemies. Trump caving to big business to exclude migrant workers. Again, that might be a failing of Trump. I agree that could be, but ultimately the GOP wouldn't back him on that anyway. So the question is, what can he actually get done? However, I will say this, guys, I meant to ask you about this, but the response from the administration's spokespeople has not been great either. We've gotten, Stephen Miller saying this guy was an assassin who's going to go after it. Like, I love Miller, but that was not something that he had evidence to say at the time. We also have, a lot of DHS, people going out there and saying, oh, well, he had a gun with 2 magazines. It's a military style gun. It's got a threaded barrel. What if he had fired super bullets? Like that kind of stuff. They just sound like the New York Times, like, oh my God, he's going to put a chainsaw bayonet on it. Like that's the kind of thing we've been getting over again. What do you guys think about the messaging and especially when it comes to the danger of the gun, when we're kind of the people who are fine with people owning dangerous guns?
I mean, I really think that the messaging here should be, how about them Seahawks? Like,
Right.
Have you seen those trends where it's like shooter good, shooter bad, and then the Bears,
exactly. Can you believe the Patriots are in again? That should be that should be all of the communication we get from DHS. Christy Nome talking about some guy's passing percentage.
I mean, in all seriousness, like the way to handle this is just to not take the bait. And like, if you have to say something, it's like, we'll be sure to investigate ourselves. Thank you for your concern.
Situation monitored. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, any thoughts?
I agree with Kevin. Like, you really can't be taking the bait here, because I think that as much as people want to be based in theory, when it comes to the actual pushing and shoving and doing what's necessary to deport people, I mean, this is going to be one of those moments where you cannot allow yourself to have any last vestigial traces of that, sweet suicidal empathy. Like, this is not the time for it. I don't need you to give me a commentary. If anything, your only statement should be is that our agents are doing their job and that we were elected to do. And it should be from that, and then go straight towards like, hey, did you hear this next great thing that we're doing to make life more affordable for Americans? And then just carry on from there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a democracy fan, but if it means anything, if you vote for a guy because he's going to deport people, and then you literally have a full-on insurrection coordinated by state and local officials to stop them from doing that, at some point it's like, okay, well, if election's going to matter at all, you have to allow people to do the things they were elected to do. But anyway.
Well, it's the same thing as give me all the programs, but don't raise my taxes. I mean, it's a fundamental, like, people want contradictory things and they vote for them. And it's a fundamental problem that you're enumerating. But what I guess I would say about that is, like, I think our guys, the people who are sort of read in, they tend to think that like democracy is fake and therefore politics is fake, but no, actually, like, politics is incredibly real.
Right.
And the reality and like what you can accomplish politically is actually enhanced by the fact that democracy is fake. There's so much you can do procedurally. There's so much you can do at a small scale that like you actually couldn't do if democracy worked in like the idealized way you were taught in middle school. So I think it's incredibly important to get involved.
Yeah, once you no longer have to pretend that the rules are the rules, then there's so many things you can do inside the game when you no longer have to obey the rules. Right. Or at least you only have to treat them as superficially valid. Yeah. Cherry Cook Nixon says, Signal Chat is just the tip of the iceberg. Recall many right-wing anons exposed Antifa during Charlie Kirk's investigation, having ties to China and Cuba. Go time. Yeah, I mean, again, that would be fantastic. Those RICO cases can roll off Pam Body's desk whenever she's ready, whenever she gets around to it. That'd be great. Maybe, stay up a few extra nights, put it in a few hours on the weekend, figure that out. That'd be great. He also says, how many Peggy Flanagans are hiding in low-profile statewide offices across the state? Need a grassroots movement to identify and prosecute. Well, so here's another thing. If you should be getting involved in politics. We already talked about that. But you can also get involved in investigative journalism because you have a phone. And now, there are far more of these Somali fraud scams and everything else being broken by like random guys with phones than by anyone in traditional media. So in addition to getting out there and being involved, work together, go knock on some doors, figure out where the ethnic cartels are, Figure out how to find a local government official who's working with Antifa or encouraging radical left-wing violence. Make sure that story gets out everywhere. Make that person famous. These are things you can do now, and you don't have to sit around and wait for the Trump administration. Oh, Trump's not going to do anything. Okay, what are you going to do? You're going to sit around complaining about Trump not doing anything, or are you going to get off your butt and make it happen? You don't have excuses. You don't have to be some base ninja, gunfighter. You don't have to be some master politician or some kind of crazy genius. You can just be a guy with a cell phone, a guy showing up to local meetings. You can just be that guy.
Consider how many gay guys James O'Keefe has just destroyed by putting like some glasses on, like Clark Kent.
The Clark Kent of homosexuals, really. Yeah,
it's incredible.
Are you a somewhat attractive man? Are you prepared to take one for your country? You don't have to. You don't have to. Okay, that's the good news. You just have to talk them up to the point. Okay, but yeah, I am not encouraging homosexual seduction here. I just want to make that clear. Do not go through with the seduction. All right. Grim also says, my face when ice literally caused a plane crash. Did that happen? Did I miss something? I don't know.
There was some headline going around that due to bad weather, a private plane had crashed with allegedly some big ice
the
lawyers and such.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like a Peggy Sue moment, but with all the the Democrat lawyers in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hit him with the beam.
Space lasers.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
What did Donald call it? The discombobulator?
Yeah.
Got him with the discombobulator. It's all over. And then we just have a donation from, looks like the Mr. Quinones. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Latrina Bidet, IRS enforcer, running one of the best names in the game. The entire situation is completely dysfunctional from top to bottom, starting to get Children of Men failed state vibes. It is a little wild out there. I mean, I always think that any place that's cold is already basically destitute and post-apocalyptic. Because it's about 80 degrees right now in South Florida. God bless the rest of you. But yeah, it really does look absolutely wild there right now, especially with the eating of hands.
At least in Children of Men, they were openly anti-immigration.
I suppose that's true. Trico Nixon, watching old acquaintances eat up the pretty narrative and go full 2020 was depressing. Instagram, TikTok are poison. Anyone else noticing this? I mean, yeah, the George Floydification of this guy, we're here again, and it's just amazing the people who are falling for it. Again, if you want to say this isn't the cleanest shoot, that's fine. If you even want to tell me, okay, maybe someone involved should face consequences. Again, I don't think so. I think there's enough mitigating circumstances for everyone here to be more or less in the clear. But if you think that's the case, then make that case. Don't tell me about the need to get rid of ICE, stop ICE operations, pull out of Minnesota. We don't stop, busting people for murder because one cop got the wrong guy. That's just not how this works. There are bad cops that make bad decisions. You punish them, but you keep enforcing the law. Okay, that's all there is to it. Mr. Quinones also says, you had me at Judas Priest Killing Machine. Yep, great album. Be a big Priest fan. We've also got In Flames and some Black Sabbath back there this week. Let's see here. The Crooked Menagerie says it's likely never had a manual safety on that model. No, I don't think the 320 ever did have a manual safety. That's my point, is that a lot of these striker fired guns keep lightening their trigger and don't add a manual safety. So you're just kind of moving towards this inevitable nexus of negligent discharges. Again, the only three things that keep you from firing a gun accidentally are the holster, the trigger guard being covered by the holster, the weight of the trigger, and a manual safety. If you've removed all three of those, guns out of the holster, trigger is extremely light, no manual safety, it doesn't take much. Like I said, a lot of these triggers are 4 pounds at this point. That's not a lot, especially in a high stress situation. Very easy to brush that trigger and negligently just discharge the firearm. That's not unique to SIG, by the way. Companies like Canik are, putting out 3-pound triggers on pre-cocked striker fire weapons. Someone's going to shoot somebody. That's how that works. People got too close to the line, and now, we're in this scenario. It's a bad decision by gun manufacturers, but it's also what the public was, asking for. So there you go. Nixon says corporate media has demanded NFL-style replay refereeing for those shootings. Totally outrageous. Zero analysis of Babbitt or Denver bear spray incident. Yeah, again, another great point with Babbitt, right? Like Babbitt didn't even have a gun and was shot, but we didn't get endless discussions of that. We didn't talk about how the Capitol Police had to be disbanded. Capitol Police have to go home. No more security for the American Congress because one person got shot. No, they gave the guy a medal. That's what the left does. They slap a medal on the guy who shot her, and you're crying. Like, I'm sorry, you're weak. You're weak, and you deserve to be ruled if you can't get past that. You just do. Like, that's all there is to it. Spartan says the situation wouldn't be this bad if Trump cracked down after those 2 National Guardsmen and Charlie Kirk. Trump was only made more work for himself. I agree that there should have been more done afterwards. Like I said, we should have seen the Antifa, RICO cases, that kind of thing, but we just haven't. And there's, I'm sure, a lot of excuses as to why it doesn't happen. But I'm totally with you. Like this is in a way a situation of the Trump administration's own making for not being more serious towards left-wing violence. But here we are. So like now we got to deal with it. Latrina again says left is so inside the right's OODA loop. It's insane. Sure. Kevin, want to explain the OODA loop?
I actually don't know what it stands for, but it basically is just your sort of it's observe, orient, decide, act. I think that's what
I think so. I think that's
it's basically the loop of you see what's happening and then you decide what to do about it and you do something. And to get inside someone's OODA loop is to sort of disrupt that process, to act quicker than them, to take the initiative in a situation. And yeah, it's the thing with the Trump. Whether or not you think Trump is doing a great job, again, it's like, get outside of the spectator sports mentality. Like, stop litigating it like your democracy's fake. It actually doesn't matter what you think about any of this. And regardless, it's like, back when Trump won in 2024, I said, if it's all going to hell and Trump's not the guy, then you're going to wish that you organized for power. And if Trump is the guy and we make America great again, you're going to wish that you organized for power. Like, there's no scenario in which getting out in the real world, getting to know your police chief, your city council, your school board, getting involved with your local party, there's no world in which that's not beneficial to you. In fact, especially if you think that it's an incredibly corrupt process and it's in a terminal decline, because systems like that are incredibly corrupt and in terminal decline, they actually matter a lot more for your normal life. Like, it's much more invasive. There's much more sort of power consumption within these systems as they fall apart. So like, if you're like, turbo Vanta black pilled on all this stuff, that's where you need to be. And if you're super white pilled, that's where you need to be. It doesn't make any difference.
I'll make sure to throw, I know I'm doing the you're from Texas. You must know the one person I know in Texas because you were in the military. You must know every military abbreviation and weapon system. I'll just throw them at Matt next time and see. We'll just try to spread it out there. If any tank questions come up, I'll hit them with them like this. Florida Henry says all the laws being broken by protesters or business hiring illegals and nothing is done. How can conservatives preach rule of law? An excellent question. And this is, what I always push back with people who are, rule of law. Well, let's try having it at all, right? Like it's not happening and it's not happening for a reason. And people pretending that we're operating under it are fooling themselves. Now there's a color of law, which is usually probably worth maintaining at this point to maintain legitimacy. But as Kevin pointed out, well, if the system's broken, then you don't have to sit around and keep pretending that it works. And then you can work inside that broken system. You can maximize your advantages inside that system instead of pretending that there's a different game that you're not playing at all, that has a whole set of rules that no one's following. Orwell's Goon says, Sicario meme posting, GunTuber, Global War on Terror Bros are on suicide watch right now. ICE is moving them. Their destinies are 15-minute cities with libertarians. This is a land full of penguins, and they are not penguins. Yeah, the penguin meme has been amazing here recently. I didn't see the original video at first, so I did not know what everyone was referencing. But once I saw, I was like, yes, the majesty. Now I understand. Manny Ute says the GOP thinks this is a college football game, and the Dems are planning to put their enemies in gulags. Act accordingly and stay safe out there, folks. Yeah, unfortunately, the GOP simply does not take the situation seriously, and neither do the libertarians or anyone else calling to bail us out of this situation. It's simply not going to work.
One of my guys said this morning, if only they cared about it as much as they care about a college football.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Like I've seen guys
Lord,
like
please.
get on airplanes. I've seen guys put lots and lots of money into like boosting their local college football team. I mean, it's that would be a huge step up.
Yeah. Finally, someone who's willing to invest in right-wing causes the way they invest in their alma mater, right? Like that's really what we're looking for here. Maybe we can gamify it, like take bets on ice actions. Like, it shoots the guy, but he only gets the third finger. And then you also need to get like a subsequent arrest on, an assault charge. And, you hit the trifecta. That's going to pay out 4-1, and start tapping into the degenerate internet gambling market.
Yeah, as soon as everyone does their fantasy draft, you need to have fantasy deportations that actually become real, and Kalshi will pay it out for you. Not that I encourage, the financialization of all things that have been gamified, but I mean, if there's a way to get people more invested and to donate money to ICE, so be it. I'm all for it. Let's make it happen.
Maybe we can find a way to turn this into like a community fundraising thing, like a raffle, except it's prop bets on the ice raids. All proceeds go to a good cause.
Just give them a nickname and have them like with their little introductions, like they do with the offensive and defensive line at the beginning of every game, and just be like, this is where I'm assigned to do. This is who I like to target. Just I don't know if we're gonna turn this into Videodrome or whatever, then we might as well make it as entertaining as possible.
Yeah, I want them running down the faces of biennialism, pointing out all of the spiteful mutants in the crowd. You get 15 points extra if you get the purple-haired one over there. That's definitely a dude. That guy tuned out. Like have all that set up beforehand. Let's see what we can do about it. I think we might be able to pull this off. Like I think this is something we can make real. I'm gonna put a little research in there. I might know a guy. All right. Grim from not Grim from Red Riding Hood says, I recommend everyone watching this try and join the OGC. You should absolutely be getting involved in local organizations. And if you are a man of excellent caliber, you should take a look at the OGC. Let's see here. Manny Youth says it's depressing how many people on the right would be happier to be beautiful losers than ugly winners. Yeah, I mean, Sam Francis wrote the book for a reason. It's the perfect title. It's hard to get out of your mind once you've heard it. And Nixon says, based ice parlays brought to you by DraftKings. Yeah, I know we just did the sports betting's a problem episode, but I don't know, man. I might have to break it for this one. We'll
I
see
need
what we
my
can do.
bit. I need my bit in the mouth of the FanDuel American. I need him pulling my sled.
Learn how to turn him this way and that. All right, guys. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you once again, Kevin and Mathew, for coming on. Make sure you're checking out both of their content. They both write excellent work on Substack and in other places. If it's your first time on this channel, you need to subscribe on YouTube, click the bell notification so you know when we go live. I'd like to have you get those broadcasts as podcasts. If you want to join us, you need to go on to different podcast platforms and make sure to leave a rating or review when you join up. That helps with the algorithm magic. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.